Assalamu alaikum, Brother Yoram. Thank you for accepting our invitation again. Our first interview with you had a huge viral impact with more than 4 million views now. Were you expecting such an interest or were you surprised?
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't expect it to go viral, and 4 million views is, of course, a lot. But alhamdulillah, it's a good thing, I think, because perhaps it helped spreading the message, explain a little bit of why I converted, and especially what Islam is in a very basic way, because, of course, I'm not a scholar, but perhaps it helped.
Now, let me ask some questions that are frequently asked by disbelievers. What would you say to a person who says that your prophet plagiarized from the Old Testament and the New Testament and came up with the Quran?
Yeah, no, it's that's really impossible. Of course, I looked into that argument as well, especially when I was like a Islam critic. But when you look at the Quran and the way it is constructed, it's almost impossible for someone, especially when you don't have a computer, to make sure that there is like unity in it. And there is a lot of unity, whether people believe it or not. Even very skeptic people from the Western tradition, even the Eastern tradition in it, and I'm not talking about Muslim countries, of course, they say it's a remarkable book. So for someone who didn't have a computer, who was illiterate in a way, it is impossible to create something like that. If he did, it is a miracle on its own. But when it comes to people who say he copied stuff like that, well, the New Testament, for example, wasn't there yet. There was no New Testament. It wasn't translated into Arabic. And if he really was illiterate, how could he know? And if there were perhaps 2-3 people telling him some stories about Christianity, there is so much deep theological stuff in the Quran related to Christianity that's impossible because, again, there was no New Testament yet, so he couldn't copy it at all. It was impossible. I always see, when I look at Christianity, I always see it as a book with a lot of truth, but not the complete truth. So when I look at, for example, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran, and I put it next to it, it's like a puzzle. So where I miss some things, and things are a little bit changed in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And when Islam came with the Quran, it corrected the first 2 revelations, so to say. So it completed my religion. And it's, of course, it's in the Quran itself. Well, today I completed your religion. But also when you look at it from a theological perspective, even from Christianity, as an ex-Christian, of course, I think that counts. So that's true. And the part of Jesus, Isa, alayhi salam, he's, of course, in Christianity a very core person. He is almost the central figure. But he is not absent in Islam, because some people ask me, why do you left the team of Jesus? That was really a question. And I told them, well, I didn't left the team of Jesus. Jesus is in our team as well. But it's for a lot of Christians, it's very hard to accept that after Jesus, there was someone else. And if people do accept that, then it's very easy for them to become Muslim.
They also wonder about Sharia. Generally, they only think of some really harsh punishments like the ones they see in the media. Is Sharia really the same thing that most people think of? If not, what is Sharia?
Well, of course, I'm not a scholar, but what I know, when I read and learned about Sharia, they say, well, it's a doctrine of religious duties. And it's very broad. It has to do with clothing, it has to do with food, it has to do with praying, it has to do with trade, it has to do with everything. And of course, there's this small part that has to do with criminal justice as well. But in the West, and it has to do with the propaganda from way back, like we talked about it in the 16th, 17th century. But up till this day, people are saying, well, Sharia is this, that. No, that's not Sharia. It's a very, very small part of Sharia. But that is because Islam is a holistic concept. So it doesn't talk only about the way of the heart. It's a practical religion. It really fits life here on earth, in the dunya. So what it means is that we have to talk about all these aspects, all these segments of the dunya as well. And criminal justice is a part of it. And a lot of people in the West often say to me, well, they don't really punish people. We have people here who committed rape, for example. They only get 1 year in prison, 1 year. And I can imagine if, as a father, if my daughter was raped, I don't want this guy to be punished 1 year. I want a severe punishment, a real punishment. And when I look at other systems, of course there are stronger punishments, but that's not what Sharia is about. And again, in the West, they don't see it like that because they don't want to see Islam for what it is most of the time, especially people who do know Islam in the core, but they really don't want to be a Muslim. So they take these arguments and they twist it a little bit and they make it seem very scary and stuff like that. But when you look at the Ottoman Empire, for example, or apostasy, because that's something that a lot of people talk about, right? Yeah, when you're an apostate, you get killed, etc. When you compare that, for example, to America before it became the United States, there have been a lot of people who were killed there because they left their religion, because the church there or the state there said you're not a real Christian or we're doubting. Look at the Inquisition in Europe. They killed so many people, thousands and thousands of people. And when you compare this, for example, to the Ottoman Empire, in over the last 400 years of the Ottoman Empire, only 3 people were punished that way. 3. And when you compare that to the West, where thousands and thousands, but still the idea is Islam is scary and they kill everybody, and the West is sweet and nice. No, that's not the real deal. That's not factual. It's not historical. But that has to do with propaganda. So, but that's another topic, I think.
They also ask, why do we need laws from God to be ruled justly? Can't we find what is right and what is wrong on our own?
Yeah, it's almost a philosophical question. No, I don't think people can do that because people are very changeable. And when you look at the history, and of course I'm a Western guy and I live in the West, when I look at the history of the West, the times that people thought they could do without a deity, without God, Allah, it didn't end up very well. When you look at, for example, the DDR, Eastern Germany, or when you look at the Soviet Union, for example, Russia, they had communism. And in communism, the state religion was atheism. And there have been a lot of ulama who were killed there because of the fact that they were Muslim and they were preaching religion and the belief in one God. They were killed, slaughtered in a horrible way, but also Christian monks. There were a lot of people really killed. So if people say, well, religion always causes violence, well, look at the Soviet Union. They were explicitly not religious and they committed horrible crimes. Over 20 million of their own people were killed, let alone the other people. Even in Albania, that used to be a Muslim country, of course, when they were under the communists, Enver Hoxha, he killed a lot of people. In China, North Korea, there are so many contexts, and of course, sometimes things change, fortunately. But when you look at the idea of people ruling themselves without the guidance of God, it doesn't end up well. Well, even when you look at the Second World War, when you look at Nazi Germany, from 39 till 45, he ruled practically the continent of Europe. But there were so many people killed. There were even disabled people who were slaughtered in the most horrible ways. And they made their man-made rules. Well, that didn't end up very well for those people. So I think that the only security for mankind to be guided in the correct way so that we can live in peace among each other is the guidance of Allah, of God.
Many non-Muslims in the West think that Islam restricts freedom because we know that they are known for and proud of a free lifestyle. Do you think this can bring happiness to humanity?
Well, I think Islam is freedom because nobody is completely free. You're always a slave of something. Slave of your money, or a slave of women, or a slave of good clothes, or a slave of whatever, then at least be a slave of the truth. So it's real freedom. What is freedom? The fact that you can be drunk, or that you can use drugs, or that you can commit zina, or whatever. That's not real freedom. In the end, you will not end up happy. So, and that's like also with little children. If I ask my child, "What do you want to eat?" She says, "Candy." If I would give her candy all day, she will be sick. And in the end, perhaps she will die because she doesn't get any vitamins, she doesn't have normal vegetables or proteins or whatever. So the fact that it seems fun doesn't mean that it is fun. And it doesn't mean that it will help you on the long run. So I think if you are a Muslim, just try to practice Islam. And I know a lot of people say, when you're a Muslim, you cannot do this, that. You can do almost everything except for a few things. And the things that you are not allowed to do have to do with your well-being. They say don't drink alcohol, don't use drugs, don't do that. And that has a reason. It's not to bully you or to make you feel bad. No, it's to help you to make sure that you are a happy person. If you're a Muslim, or even if you're not Muslim, if you're constantly using drugs or you're using other things like alcohol, or you're only going out, date stuff, clubbing, whatever, most of these people end up miserable if they're alone, because in the end they are looking for a man or a woman, and they want to have children, they want to marry. That's what most people want. But all these things are not going to help you create sustainable relations where happiness is the central focus point. Because in the end, I think we want to be what they call the people of Sa'ada, right? You want to be happy. You want to be near to the Creator. The only way that will bring you to that point is Islam. So yeah, I think people have to reconsider what real freedom is. The fact that there are so many pop stars in history, they were very rich. They had a lot of beautiful men or beautiful women, they used drugs, they used alcohol, they did everything. A lot of those people committed suicide. And that's not because all these things were making them happy. Otherwise, they would still be here. And of course, that doesn't count for everybody, but those people have everything in the extreme. And that's what a lot of people think. If I have extreme freedom, I will do this. No, you won't. And if you do, you won't end up the way you want to. So Islam is a balanced system, and it allows you to do almost everything except for the things that will make you miserable in the end. So just follow the instructions, so to say, and it will make you a happier person. And this instruction is called Islam.
I have one last request. More than 4 million people watched your first video with us on YouTube, and nearly as many watched you on Instagram. Among those people, maybe thousands of them were non-Muslims. I want you to look directly at the camera and talk to them with a few words. They may have some hesitations about embracing Islam. What would you like to say to them? Briefly, please. Why Islam? Why they shouldn't hesitate? Looking directly at the camera.
For all the people who are not Muslim yet, who are hesitating, whether you're agnostic or atheist or Christian or Buddhist or Hindu or whatever, it doesn't matter. I wish for all these people, for you at home as well, of course, Islam, and not because I think you're a bad person or whatever, and I think that goes for most of the Muslims. It's not that Muslims think you're a bad person if they want to convey Islam to you, but only, like I said during the interview, Islam really gave me peace of heart and peace of mind. And a lot of people think, well, it's very hard to become a Muslim. I have to pray 5 times and cannot do this or that. I know from experience that it's not that hard. In the end, it made me happier. And if you really are dedicated, and if you really follow the truth, and if this is really what you believe, things go very easy. So I would suggest and advise people to look into Islam, study it objectively. Don't look at what the Muslims do, look at what the ultimate teacher, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, did, and let him, in a way, convince you of the truth of Islam.